Hey there, everyone. Welcome on into another episode of WRAL Triangle and Two. I'm Luis Fernandez. He is Mark Bergin. And Mark, let's just get straight into it because we have some actual good professional football news out of the state of North Carolina. And that is the Carolina Panthers are no longer winless. Congratulations. Congratulations.
We've done it, Luis. Let me say right off the top, I'm so happy to be talking to you on this Monday, to where if the Panthers had lost, there was starting to be the narrative of CJ Stroud over Bryce Young. It's not flashy. It's not going to make headlines to say, oh, well, they should have drafted CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson instead of Bryce Young. Let's give it a bigger sample size. But the Panthers get win number one, and you see how potentially you can build off this in the coming weeks. But I'm thrilled not to have the discussion of, oh, well, Stroud should have been picked over Young. And the question I have for you, Luis, is if you role reverse the situation and you put Young on the Texans and Stroud on the Panthers, are we really getting that different of results?
Well, I mean, I guess that's going to be the question, right? And that's what people are going to continue to look at. CJ Stroud has been very, very good. Nico Collins and Tank Dell are both incredibly impressive at receiver. Dalton Schultz is a solid tight end. You know, his offensive line is better than the Panthers' offensive line, but still not great. I really like what I see from CJ Stroud. Even though he didn't have a great game against Carolina, I still really like what I see. His decisiveness throwing across the middle, he's great. You're also starting to see Bryce Young showcase now what made him so good at Alabama. You saw it on an occasion in these first 6 games, but now against the Texans here, coming off the spy, switching up to Thomas Brown, you're seeing that playmaking ability, stepping up into the pocket, firing down the middle of the field, some really good throws on the outside. He missed a few, but you also are seeing the Panthers attack downfield a little bit more. He had a few deeper passes. I think it was his first pass past 30 yards downfield came in this game as well. So improvement.
Let me hop in here. Moving the ball down 86 yards on 15 plays to set up the game winner with Eddie Pinheiro. Credit the new offensive coordinator calling plays with Thomas Brown, Frank Reich handing over those responsibilities. But there's an old slogan in sports, Luis, where they say the sideline tells the story. And look at the locker room celebration.
Yeah.
The clip that the Panthers posted on social media of the joyous celebration that all of those players have, that is very contagious. And to have that with a young leader with Bryce Young, who hasn't made excuses, hasn't been perfect. But again, I go back to the point of, can you build off of this? And so getting one is huge, to where, you know, we were saying in previous episodes, if you don't get one in the coming weeks, so you got the Colts, you got the Bears coming up on your schedule, it was going to look pretty grim beyond that, because those are weaker teams in the NFL. But now you've got one. Let's see where the Panthers go from here.
Exactly. And my whole thing, I've said it all the time, but this Panther season is less about the win-loss total and more about where is Bryce Young at the end of the season, and do you feel confident that he is the guy? Because in the NFL, you will not have success unless you have the guy, right? And so I think that we're starting to see those next steps start to happen. Obviously, it's just one game. It's just one win. They've lost 6 other ones, but there are steps in the right direction. You still see where this team needs to improve. I mean, Bryce Young was sacked, I think 6 times. I mean, like, they still need more pass protection. Some of that's on him. Some of that's miscommunication. And some of it's just he has no time to throw. So, you know, he still needs some more help. The wide receivers still need to get better separation. They still need better play. You saw some flashes start to happen. Jonathan Mingo with like a deep crossing route. You saw Adam Thielen obviously continues to be really, really good. Like he has been a great piece for Bryce Young to get comfortable with, but you still need some more explosiveness to kind of take the top off of these defenses a little bit and continue to allow them to take deep shots. But I was impressed with how Bryce Young played. And if you are a Carolina Panthers fan, I think, you know, hey, you got to appreciate the good moments.
Luis, I think it's time. I think it's time for this part of the podcast where it becomes a Frankie Louvu celebration.
Okay, yes.
Fan
Talk
show.
about Frankie Louvu.
12 tackles, 2 TFLs, 2 passes defended, a sack, a quarterback hit, and his mom in there in the flesh to watch her son play for the very first time. We could talk about Bryce Young and Frank Reich in the offense and rookie quarterbacks. Frankie Louvu, the defensive side of the football. You hold a Texans team to 13 points. you hold any team in the NFL to 13 points, good chance you're going to win the game.
Yeah, and I think so much of the Panthers, right, it's been about players not named Brian Burns stepping up. And so Frankie Louvu, I think, is someone who in Charlotte, people know him a lot better than they do nationally. But he continues to garner attention. He continues to make plays. In this Panthers team, you're at a point where you need pieces to try and build around. You need people to be in the locker room who are just good and can find success and start to change and shape that culture. So, yeah, I mean, the Texans offense was not like, top 5 offensive firepower, but they have players, they have pieces. And so to continue to see that progress, I think is just very exciting for the Panthers.
I do think we're going to be robbed in the coming weeks. I wish we could see Young go up against Anthony Richardson, but hey, can't control players' health, and hopefully he gets back on the field sooner rather than later, but he's dealing with that injury and he'll be out for the foreseeable future.
Let me ask you this, Mark, okay? Mm-hmm. I want you to put in your prognostication hat, okay? So when we look at what the Panthers, let's say through the next month, November, mm-hmm. okay? The Carolina Panthers host the Colts. Mm-hmm. They go to Chicago on Thursday night. That could be the game where Justin Fields returns, still kind of TBD. They host the Cowboys, and then they go to Nashville and play the Titans. So you're looking at a situation there where you could be playing some backups or very young quarterbacks. You're looking at a situation there where you have 10 days to prepare for the Cowboys versus just a week. What do you think the Panthers do over the course of the next 4 games in the month of November?
2 wins, and I would say potentially you'd be favored against the Colts, Minshew Mania, and then the Bears. I don't know if it's going to be Fields or Bergin, but they're just a train wreck right now, the Chicago Bears.
Sunday night was gross.
Potentially you win those 2 games. The other 2 are a little bit close, but what happens a lot of times in the NFL with the parity is, they're expected to win this game. They slip up, but then you win a game you're not expected to. So I would expect 2 wins in that 4-game stretch, Lewis, would be kind of my over-under if I were setting that. If we wanted action, I suppose I'd say a game and a half. But that's kind of how I would set that if I could put my, would you call it the prognosticator hat on?
That's something like that. Yeah. I think that's fair which is saying something, because I really like this Panthers team was hot garbage. Like, did not enjoy watching them for the first 6 games of the season.
They're not the best team to watch, and I think even a Panthers fan would say that.
They're improving, and I think that's fair. Like, my big thing when I look at those is the Cowboys to me are a team. I was talking to some friends yesterday. The Cowboys are like the ultimate bullies in that when they get up early on a team, and if they are better than the team, they beat them up. They just beat them up. And then when they play some of the top end teams in the NFL, they tend to struggle a little bit, or it's a lot closer, things like that. So I think that game will probably be out of reach, but Colts, Titans, Bears, all 3 of those games should at the very least be competitive in the 4th quarter. And once again, that is all you're looking for, is opportunities for this team to grow. So I think the month of November could be a lot better, at least for the Panthers. But let's move on a little bit.
My favorite topic of today, in all seriousness.
We're going to go Panthers to kind of Panthers. For those of you who are not paying attention this weekend, Dave Doeren and Steve Smith had a very brief beef, if you will, on College Game Day. Steve Smith, former Utah Ute, was the guest picker, and he came on and he went through. And when NC State and Clemson came up, he said, I think that NC State fans are going to already be looking ahead to the college basketball season. And then he picked Clemson. Dave Doeren, after the game on the CW, we love the CW. NC State is 3-0 on the CW. They said, he said, I will paraphrase here because, I got to be careful with some of the words he said, but essentially, he told Steve Smith to, shut up and do your homework, and, said a lot of things that were very blatant, if you will, on camera.
The kiss is behind. We can say that here on this show.
There you go.
I'll help you out there.
It was fun. It was great. He talked a little bit more in the press conference, and then on Monday today, Dave Doeren said essentially that the beef has been squashed. Him and Steve Smith had some conversations. Steve Smith might even come down to a Panthers game or to an NC State game. So very short-lived beef, but it was very fun in the moment. Mark, please, the stage is yours.
We're going to have to settle for a steel cage match, Lewis.
Between
Ryan Day and Lou Holtz. I was really hoping we could get the tag team between Dave Doeren, Ryan Day on one side, and Lou Holtz and Steve Smith on the other. I'm going to be honest. I think Steve Smith could handle them all by himself. I think he could handle all three if it came to it. But that's what we're going to have to settle for is Ryan Day versus Lou Holtz after all of this.
I think Dave Doeren could do a little something. You know what I mean? But no, I've seen Steve Smith physically fight before. In the NFL. So I'd lean towards Steve Smith too.
So in all seriousness, Dave Doeren after the game, I think he misheard what Steve Smith said, or he misunderstood, because Steve Smith saying they're looking forward to basketball school, not that they are a basketball school. Historically, NC State is a basketball school, considering back in the day, the 83 team, the 74 team, you've won national championships. So then Dave Doeren says, well, I think in my time we're the second or third most winning ACC program. So I did my homework, Lewis, because I'm petty. Clemson. So Dave Doeren took over in 2013. Clemson's top dog with 125 wins in second place. Florida State, 91 wins. Miami, 81 wins. Louisville, 81 wins as well. 77 wins. You're tied for fifth best in the ACC since you came in, Dave Doeren. You've had 3 seasons where you've won 9 games. Get to double-digit wins. I know that this isn't the season that you're going to do that, and he will go down as the Wolfpack's all-time winningest coach. But it's one of those things where it's like you want to beat your chest. You know, you have to go to an MJ Morris. You're not where you want to be at this point in the season. And I will say this, and let me land here. I credit both Dave Doeren and Steve Smith for handling this over the phone and not drawing this out on social media and handling this like men. But it's one of those things where it's like, I don't really think he meant a ton by it. And he's looking at it honestly as possible. Players are going to be as honest as possible. And what Steve Smith did as a player with his athletic excellence, and then what he's done in his post-playing career as an analyst, I wouldn't look past that. And just looking at it on the surface, I think he was trying to call balls and strikes here. I didn't think he meant anything personally against Dave Doeren or NC State.
No. And I think college football, or just in sports in general, right? You need everything you can get in order to get an advantage. Like that is what happens in athletics. That's what happens in sports. You know, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan have been have taken way over the top where they imagine, slights against them and use
things that aren't even reality.
Exactly. And so that's kind of what happens here. And you always, especially NC State, I think they have built their image in college football, especially on this notion of being blue collar, of kind of, grit and grind and that kind of thing. So, it makes sense for Dave Doeren to lean into this. Absolutely. Like do what you're going to do. And I think too, you have to give Doeren his flowers at some point. Like he just tied NC State's all-time record for most wins by a head coach. Like that's very impressive. But the thing is, when I look at NC State and what Dave Doeren has, it's been more about consistency than I would say the highs. You know what I mean? Like
excellence.
That 7, 8,
excellence.
Exactly. It's that 7-8 game win. And then, in college football, I think if you were not one of those top flight, top tier programs, you need consistency. And then you need to have those moments of excellence. That's kind of, I think, the name to the game. If you were not like an Ohio State or an Alabama or an Oklahoma. So, I give credit where credit is due. I do this Clemson team was not the Clemson teams of old. This is not the most impressive win you'll ever see in your lifetime. I think it was based on success rates. Clemson was way over NC State in terms of their success rates. NC State had 202 yards of total offense, I believe. But this was classic NC State win, which was play solid special teams, play great defense, create turnovers, have opportunities to score off those turnovers. Complementary football. So, is it a little over the top, and is it an imagined slight? I believe so. But, hey, NC State wins. So it's like, yeah,
Imagine
put up,
Slight's exactly
and
right, though, too, because look at during Dave Doeren's tenure, this is only the second time he's beaten Clemson.
I mean, how many?
Let's be real here.
Not many teams have beaten Clemson twice in
That's
the time
true.
that Dave Doeren has been there.
That's
You know what I mean? I'm not going to stand up here and like try and like, the NC State's football program has been very disappointing this year, or has been disappointing. They underachieved last year. They had to have a lot of injuries. I'm not going to stand up here and, like plant a flag for NC State football, but I do think credit needs to be given when it's due. And hey, you get the win against Clemson, you move one step closer to a bowl game, you're figuring things out. So I don't know. I give credit where credit is due.
Let's see how the Wolfpack fare Saturday night.
Yeah.
Against Miami at home. And when you take this outside of the beef between Dave Doeren and Steve Smith, and now they're singing Kumbaya, and we'll see if Steve Smith actually comes to visit. I'm a little skeptical about that.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of going from the basketball season.
Hang on. One final point.
Yeah.
If you're a Wolfpack fan, you got to be thanking your lucky stars that Peyton Wilson isn't seriously injured and he's expected to be ready to go Saturday night. That might be the most important thing coming out of Saturday outside of this beef between Dave Doeren and Steve Smith that seems to be smoothed over now.
Peyton Wilson's so good. And he's speaking of giving someone their flowers. I mean, he's going to be in the running for ACC Player of the Year or Defensive Player of the Year. He's been phenomenal. I mean, he's the reason they beat Clemson. Like, honestly, him and Casey Concepcion. Like, when you have you players, it's sometimes in football, especially, it's hard to pinpoint X team won because of this person. Those two were the reason NC State won.
Coming out party for the freshman.
Yeah, indeed. He's good. Led him in both receiving and rushing. Okay. We will go ahead and transition now to college basketball. It was much expected for, the past few weeks or so, kind of the rumblings. Just it seemed like this was always going to be what happened. Top prospect in the class of 2025, I believe. Cooper Flagg is committing to Duke. Let me just double check and make sure Cooper Flagg is class of 2025. Hold on.
I believe it's 2024, and then he's considered the top overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, Lewis. Let me provide some transparency for the people who take the time to either watch us or to listen to this each week. Lewis is trying to be very, very polite here because the rich get richer and that his rival is getting like the top overall prospect in the next class. And Duke's getting a stud recruiting class this year. Lewis is a UNC grad.
Capital J journalist.
You can see it.
Capital J journalist. But this is this is status quo for what Duke does. I mean, they constantly getting those top players. Cooper Flagg is very interesting because he has turned into one of those days where he's turned into one of those players that his name just is heard everywhere. Obviously not to the extent of a Zion or someone like that, but I mean, the buzz that he's been generating over the past year, especially, has been really impressive. 6'8", power forward, about 200 pounds, but a legitimate two-way player. Just the way he defends, his shot blocking ability, only going to continue to grow as his athleticism. I am very excited for what Cooper Flagg can bring to the Blue Devils. I think he's going to be a very good player. The notion of one and done, I don't know what that even looks like anymore in the NIL world. So we'll see. But he is going to be really fun to watch come next year.
Yeah, I said it. The rich get richer, and this comes too as Duke recently announced John Shire's contract extension. So it's can he pick up that baton now entering year 2? Post Coach K, and right now it's looking pretty good for the Blue Devils. So you don't miss a beat here, and then you bring in the best of the best for the next class. And I look across the triangle, it's how's UNC going to counter? What's NC State going to do? But this was expected too, and in the aftermath of the tragedy that happened in Maine too, I credit Cooper Flagg for having the awareness to say, hey, I know I was supposed to announce my commitment on this day, but we're going to save this for another day. And then we find out this morning, Lewis, on Monday, October the 30th, the day before Halloween, that it's official that, hey, he is in fact going to Duke. And I'm not going to wish my life away because I want to see what happens this season, but I can't wait to see what he does once he gets to Durham.
I mean, it would be really interesting to see what the momentum is in Duke's program when Cooper Flagg joins next year, because they could have a very, very good season this year. Okay, let's go ahead and stick with the Blue Bloods, but hop back to college football for a second. UNC and Duke, for a long time, we were saying, oh man, college game day coming to Chapel Hill
for a pipe dream now, Lewis.
Bye. Not anymore. ACC Network, CW, see you there. It's so tough because the way both of these programs have, played the last couple of weeks, the Riley Leonard injury was so big to Duke's momentum in the season. Obviously losing on the road to Florida State, especially when you had that halftime lead, that's nothing to, get upset about. But being shut out by Louisville is very tough. So Duke needs to figure things out right now would be the next step. They play at Wake Forest on Thursday. Wake Forest also struggling a bit, got blown out by Florida State, is 4-4 overall this year. And then UNC, golly, like this defense that looked so good, above average in the first half of the season, just surrenders 22 points in the fourth quarter to Georgia Tech. So many rushing yards. Mark,
635 yards allowed total.
That's so many. Rushing yards. And the fact that, what was it, over 200 of them came in the fourth quarter alone, I believe.
I'm glad Tez is okay. I don't know if he'll play Saturday against Campbell Lewis, but what was going through your brain when you were watching on Saturday against Georgia Tech, where it's like, we've had this circled on the calendar. The Tar Heels have struggled in Atlanta, but yet again, they can't get it done against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. What was going through your brain when all this was happening? Because against Virginia, it was like, maybe this is the trap game, but we knew this was going to be the trap game, and the Tar Heels still lose.
They are who we thought they were. That's
you're going Dennis Green on us today. All right.
That's just, I think that's just what it was. Very UNC football to lose against Virginia and against Georgia Tech. I think you can look at the Virginia game and say, hey, this was a trap game. There were mistakes that were made, plays left on the field. They were so focused on what came next. They were kind of, they were high on themselves a little bit, like, okay, sure. But talking to the players, talking to the coaches, they all understood the notion of Georgia Tech and what it means for UNC to play in Atlanta and how difficult it can be, how much of a roadblock, a stumble in the road the game last year against Georgia Tech was. Everyone understood this. Everyone knew it. And it just didn't matter. When I look at it, I almost wonder if UNC put too much pressure on themselves. And the second things start to fall apart, it's like, oh no, here we go again. But that's diving into the psychology of it.
Yeah. And really quickly too, Lewis, before we wrap here, the Virginia game, I point to time of possession, where your defense can't get off the field, and then for whatever reason, even up multiple scores, you decide to abandon the running game in Omarion Hampton. Tar Heels won time of possession in this game, had the ball for 32 minutes, but goes back to the defense, where I thought it was an unfair narrative when we were talking a week ago after the Virginia loss to say, oh, well, they reverted back to the 2022 form. Against Georgia Tech, that was that 2022 defense. Yeah.
You can't score 42 points and lose. It's as simple as that. You can't score 42 points and lose. And, when you look at what they were able to do with Sam Howell, when you look at what they were able to do with Drake May, two of the best quarterbacks that have ever come through UNC, at this point, you're on the outside looking into the ACC championship. You would need Louisville to stumble, some other things to happen. You still need to be able to beat Duke and Clemson and NC State. I mean, it'd be very frustrating. And
I noticed you leave Money Mitch Trubisky off that list, Lewis. But in all seriousness, I do want to ask you about this.
That's Mitchell. That's Mitchell to you, Mark Bergin.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that. I do want to ask you about this too. Yeah. Is we've got 2 home games left in Chapel Hill. It's going to be the last 2 times Drake May suits up for the Tar Heels in Chapel Hill. unless there was like, and I hate even saying this, unless there's like a catastrophic injury of some sort, but he's going pro. I mean, he's one of the top quarterback prospects we have. And I would make the argument. I don't know if I believe this yet. I need to watch some more tape that he could be even better than Caleb Williams. And you might say, oh, Mark, you're being a homer. But that 6'4" frame versus Caleb Williams is like listed at 6'1". When he goes to the combine and it turns out he's actually like 5'11", you'll say that you heard it here first on WRAL Triangle and Two.
I really like Drake May, but Caleb Williams is who you're going to draft at number 1.
Okay. But what's that like for you knowing that we're getting our final few games of Drake May in a Tar Heels uniform?
I mean, it's always great to appreciate greatness, right? And Drake May has been fantastic. Even in these losses, he's been really good. I still think he needs to work on his decision making a little bit. I think sometimes he tries to go for the big play a little too often, make the difficult throw a little too often. But I mean, it's so wild because if you're looking at this from like a UNC perspective, right? How often do you go from, and if you're not Ohio State or Alabama or someone like that, how often do you go from generational quarterback to generational quarterback to generational quarterback? Like, so what does that mean for next season for UNC? What does that mean for the future of UNC? It's really hard. It's a tough position, I think, for UNC to be in. And at this point, all you can do is just play the games in your schedule and see what happens with the ACC.
If I'm a recruit, though, I'm going to go over to Mack Brown and his staff and work under the quarterback whisper that they are. In all seriousness,
I mean, I think
I think that's got to help with recruiting. If I'm a top quarterback prospect, I can go to Chapel Hill, light it up for a year or two, and like, look, here's the common denominator I see, Lewis. Multiple year starter with Howell. He's having some success in the league, but look, it might not be Patrick Mahomes. He's an NFL starter. Drake May, I'd expect to be the same thing. Whichever team drafts him, it's going to be starting as a rookie in the 2024 season. Trubisky had his opportunity. The difference with Trubisky is he played 1 year as the full-time starter in Chapel Hill. So that's kind of how I see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question becomes, is it nature or nurture? You know what I mean? Was it you returned into a generational quarterback, or did you come in as a generational quarterback? So I don't know, but it's a tough spot for UNC to be in. Duke looks pretty good for next year. Duke football. That's all I'm saying. Especially if
Lewis.
Riley Leonard continues to have success. But that is going to do it for us here. I'm Luis Fernandez. He is Mark Bergin. You've been listening / watching WRAL Triangle and Two. Catch us wherever you listen to your podcasts, on the WRAL Sports Fan, on WRAL 99 or 99.9 The Fan's YouTube page, all of the above. Mark, I believe you had something you wanted to plug. You want to tell us how athletic you are. Is that correct?
Yes, I've got one thing to tease. So the City of Oaks Marathon coming up on Sunday. The next time we talk, Lewis, your boy will be a marathon runner, my very first one. We've got a full guide coming out this week on WRAL.com, where to park, where everything is, road closures, the different events and festivities around Sunday's event in Raleigh. I also wrote a preview too, Lewis, about how to train, the things that I've learned in advance. I can't wait. I hope my legs still work on Monday, but it's going to be a very fun event in Raleigh, City of Oaks Marathon. Cannot wait. And Lewis, thanks for the chance to plug that. I appreciate you.
We're going to go ahead and just schedule in someone to come in and replace you on Monday, because I'm going to be recovering. Also, before I forget, the ACC women's soccer tournament is at Wake Med Soccer Park this weekend. And also, on top of that, you have North Carolina FC playing in the USL League One final, trying to win their first ever league final. That is on Sunday at 5:30, I believe. They just changed the time there. And they're playing a North Carolina rival, Charlotte Independence, in that one. So a lot of stuff going on here in the Triangle. May need to change the name sometimes at Triangle and 5, Triangle and 6, something like that. But thank you everybody so much for listening in. I'm Luis Fernandez. He's Mark Bergin. We'll see you next week. Bye, folks.